Hello and welcome to Renew, the show about the College of Forest Resources at Mississippi State University. The College of Forest Resources promotes and enables the conservation, management, and wise use of our natural resources. I'm your host, Leslie Berger. Today's show will focus on the Department of Forestry, and here to represent that unit is faculty member Dr. Heidi Reniger. Welcome to the show today.
Thank you for having me.
I'm glad you're able to be here. You're in the Department of Forestry, but when people outside this discipline think of forestry, they probably don't think about what it is that you do. You are a physiologist, a tree physiologist, or an ecological physiologist. So what is that? Would you explain what it is that you do?
Yes, so a tree physiologist, basically I look at how trees function, and the ecological part comes in that I look at how trees function in their environment, so how environment affects the physiological functioning of a tree. And when you look at trees, you might not realize that they're actually doing a lot of functioning.
Right.
All of the photosynthesis that the leaves are doing. We can actually measure that with some of these machines that we've brought and that my grad student will talk about. And the other main thing that I focus on is water use. And a lot of people also don't realize that all plants, but specifically trees and forests, use a lot of water and take a lot of water out of the soil and put it into the atmosphere. And so that affects hydrologic cycling, how much water is available in groundwater and streams and things like that. Different types of trees might use different amounts of water. And so that can be really important for an ecosystem and for productivity. There's a correlation between their ability to use water and how much water is in the environment, soil moisture, and how much they're able to do photosynthesis and ultimately grow. And so I look at a lot of those interactions.
Right, well that's very interesting. How did you find yourself in this field in the first place? What led you to this, to studying tree physiology?
Yeah, that's a good question. I guess probably from my undergrad, I originally was in a biology department, and I think I originally wanted to look at studying animals because I didn't really realize how cool plants were and how cool trees were. But once I took a botany course and learned about photosynthesis and learned about the water transport and specifically trees having to lift water sometimes 100 meters in the air against gravity, how are they able to do that? So it's really interesting. And I think also physiology is a neat intersection between biology and physics and chemistry, and those things kind of all come together. I think biology can be a bit messy in terms of kind of understanding what's going on in an ecosystem, whereas when you put the chemistry in there and the physics in there, you can actually develop equations and mathematical models to describe what's going on, which I think I tend to gravitate
Okay, so you enjoy the mathematical side of that. Okay, well that's very interesting. We have some pictures and equipment that show some of the ways that you do some of this measuring that you were talking about. And so if, for example, we have a picture here. You are in the field with a box. So what is it that you're doing there with your box?
This was taken at Zema, who's my grad student's field site, and that's a data logger, which I also have sitting here, which I can show in a second. But I'm basically downloading data off of this data logger. This is kind of an older version of one of these data loggers. But this is basically how we measure water use from a tree, and we call it measuring sap flow, the water that is flowing through the xylem, through the trunk of the tree, and eventually evaporating out of all of the leaves. And so with these little sensors, which are kind of hard to see, they're basically made out of hypodermic needles with some wire wrapped around them. But they each have what's called a thermocouple inside, and it's two very thin wires that are joined together at their tip. And so because they're two different kinds of metals for each wire, one has electrons at a higher electron state than the other one, and the electrons travel from the one at a higher energy state to the one at a lower energy state, and movement of electrons is electricity. So this little thermocouple generates an electrical current. And it's also dependent on temperature, because the hotter it is, the faster the electrons move. So each of these little sensors have these thermocouples inside. And so when we stick them into a tree, and Zema will have some pictures of these actually in the sapwood of the tree. As water is...
I think we're going to have to stop right
Oh,
here, but
okay.
hopefully
Sorry.
Zema can explain some more of that when she comes
Okay,
back. So I
great.
appreciate all that you've shared. We'll return just a few minutes to learn more about tree physiology and how that ties to conservation of our forest resources in just a minute.
A baby's arrival can be one of the most exciting times in a family's life. It can also be one of the most anxious, especially if the child's development is hindered by medical challenges that create more questions than answers. At Mississippi State University, we're groundbreakers in the study of CHARGE syndrome, a genetic condition that leads to a host of life-threatening birth defects. Our research teams are uncovering breakthroughs in treatment and prevention with a goal of greater understanding that leads to better care. We're also providing crucial support resources for parents and helping physicians around the globe gain awareness so symptoms can be detected and addressed earlier. By engaging in this innovative analysis and therapy, we're not only improving outcomes, we're unlocking brighter futures. Discovery. It tells our history and determines our future. At Mississippi State University, we're digging deep, unlocking an understanding of our past, validating it. Middle East exploration by faculty and students is uncovering evidence that unravels ancient mysteries. Scholars have long thought of the biblical kings David and Solomon as mythological figures. Our research offers evidence that supports their existence, boosting MSU into an international league of experts on archaeology. Now we're changing the way people think about the past, opening up new possibilities of understanding for future generations. Digging deeper, learning more.
Welcome back to Renew. Joining me now is Zema Kasahun, who's a master's student in the Department of Forestry. You are originally from California, and here you are in Mississippi. So how did you end up here?
Well, I was born in Riverside, California, and when I was 18, I applied to George Mason University in Virginia, and I did my undergraduate in environmental science there. So I'd already left California by the time I decided to move here. And then I applied to graduate school all across the United States and ended up finding a really great department and a really great major professor here at Mississippi State University. So I moved here about a year ago.
Okay. So what led you to even consider a career in an environmental field? Was it experiences that you had in California or interest that came from some other source, or what led you here?
Yeah, so my house, well, my parents' home is situated right up next to a wildlife preserve in California. So I grew up around, it's called a chaparral, it's just a desert ecosystem. And so I always was just like running around back there and exploring, and there weren't many trees, so I didn't realize I was interested in trees until I moved to Virginia, which has so many trees. So while I was doing my undergraduate environmental science, I had to take an ecology and evolution course, and there was a large portion of that course was dedicated to forest ecology. And so I found myself just enamored by being out in the forest. And so that's how I decided I wanted to be here. Right. I knew I wanted to do ecology. I just didn't know what until then.
Right. Well, you're working with Dr. Reniger, who was just speaking a little bit more, teaching us a little bit about some of the physiology work that she does. And we have some photos that show you working in the field. And so I would like for you to explain some of the things that you're doing now as a graduate student in the Department of Forestry. And so we got a picture here of the forest and some stuff in the woods there, a box that looks like a litter collecting device. And so could you explain what we've got going on here?
Yes, so that's my field site. I'm looking at a bottomland hardwood forest, which is what's pictured there. And those trees with all of the silver shade covers, those are my study trees. So we're measuring sap flow on each of those individual trees. And that leaf litter trap is, you're right, that's a leaf litter trap too. We're using that in the study as well.
Right.
So these are the sap flow probes Dr. Renninger was speaking of before. And so we're measuring how the sap moves through the tree about every 30 seconds, averaged every 30 minutes. And my study is specifically looking at how environmental factors such as temperature, relative humidity, available water, and light affect the sap flow rates of these individual trees as well as the species.
Okay, so you have multiple species that you're studying, because that would, as Dr. Renninger was saying, that'll affect how the trees respond to these environmental factors then.
Exactly, yes.
Okay.
So we have 4 different species, 4 different types of trees, and then we have 8 different species actually that we're looking at. And so each of the trees that we're looking at have their own probes set in them, and then they're wired to what you see on this image is the data logger. And so sometimes we go in there and try and fix what's happening if there are any problems. So that's what you see there. We also collect the data, but yes, so I look at different species, but as well as the different individuals to see if there's variation in response to environmental factors.
Okay. Why bottomland hardwood forest? I mean, we have a lot of timber production, a lot of pines. Usually it's kind of in the uplands, but you're working in the bottomland. So why is that your study site?
Right. So bottomland hardwood forests are not extremely prevalent in this area, but they are really important ecosystems around bodies of water. So they provide countless ecosystem services such as floodwater storage, water filtration. So I think that they're important for those ecosystem services, but also they're just such a unique ecosystem in this part of the state.
Right.
You don't see many hardwood forests.
No, not anymore, unfortunately. So where do you see yourself in 5 years?
I would love to get into the job market as after this, or even do a PhD, maybe some sort of land management or project management, looking at roughly the same thing about how the ecosystem responds to not even just environmental factors, but maybe just humans and anthropogenic development. And so just looking at trees, hopefully.
So coming from the Chaparral, going through Virginia is what made you just really decide this is where you wanted to be?
It did, yes.
Okay, well, we'd love to have you stay around here in Mississippi, and I'm sure Dr. Renninger would love to have you stay on as a PhD student, and we can find something and keep you engaged here. We'd hate to lose you, but it sounds like you're having a wonderful time and learning a whole lot here in the department, and we're glad that you are here. I also thank you for taking time out of your day to come and visit with us, and I thank Dr. Renninger for taking time to come out and teach us more about the equipment that she uses to measure sap flow in trees and how that ties into the conservation of our natural resources here in Mississippi and then elsewhere. I thank you for taking time out to join us here on Renew, and then I hope that you will come back and join us again in the future. Until then, we have a lot of bountiful natural resources here in the state, and I hope that you'll take some time out and spend them enjoying it. My name is Leslie Berger, and I have been your host of Renew.